Truth and Consequences by Miriam Young. Copyright 1975 and illustrated by Diane DeGroat. Chapter 5. Allison's mouth fell open. Her eyes grew wide and shiny. Mother had come to close the door. Kimberly, what a thing to say! Allison looks very chic. You do, Allison. That short hair gives you a real gamine look. That's another way Mother gets around telling the truth. She throws in a foreign word nobody can understand. You wait and see, Kim, she said. In a few days you'll be wanting yours cut short like that. I shuddered. Never. Allison tossed her head. She would have tossed her hair, but now there wasn't enough. All right for you, Kimberly Jones. I'm never going to speak to you again. She walked away fast. Mother looked as if she wanted to shake me. Kimberly, how could you? Your best friend. Don't you see how hurt she was? Why blame me? I didn't do it. Go talk to the guy at the beauty shop, Mr. John or whatever his name is. He's the one who cut it. Mother went on as if she hadn't heard me. That poor child. I don't blame her for saying she didn't want to speak to you again. It's just what you deserve. I thought Allison would come to her senses. All she had to do was look in the mirror and she'd see I was right. What was she mad at me for? I was the one who should be mad. Look at all the trouble I'd gone to trying to make my hair dark. I figured she'd cool off and give me a call. But when the phone rang, it was Mrs. Morse. Mother talked to her. She said about 1,000,000 times that she was sorry and that she didn't know what had gotten into me lately. I'd been talking like that to everybody. After a while, they got to talking about how difficult it was to raise children in these permissive times and got off my back. Pretty soon they were making a date to meet and go shopping on Mother's next day off. Then I heard Mother say, "Put Allison on. Let's see if we can patch things up. Come here, Kim. Allison wants to talk to you," Mother called. When I ran in, Mother took a tight hold of my arm. "You apologize," she hissed. On the other end of the phone, I could hear Mrs. Morse whispering to Allison. "I insist," she was saying. "At least listen to what Kim has to say." I didn't see why I should apologize. I hadn't done anything wrong. All I had done was tell the truth. Isn't that what friends are supposed to do? Allison didn't say anything. Not even hello. I could just hear her breathing, sniffling, sort of. I pictured her standing there with her ears sticking out and her eyes red. How could I say that she didn't look ugly? That I hadn't meant it? I kept thinking of all that nice hair on the beauty parlor floor. If Allison didn't want it herself, I thought I'd be glad to have it. "Listen, Allison," I said. "I have an idea. Why don't we call the beauty shop and tell them to save the hair? They can make you a wig." Allison yowled. Mother grabbed the phone from me and gave my bottom a slap. "That's enough, young lady. Haven't you done enough harm?" Everybody thought I meant it as a crack, and Mother went through her apology routine again. "I was only telling the truth," I kept saying. It went on and on and on, right through dinner. We were having turkey pie. I was tired of leftover turkey, but the crust was good. "Don't you want me to be honest?" I asked when they kept yammering at me. "Not if it means hurting someone, no," Mother said. "Being honest is one thing. Being brutally frank is another." Sherry was carefully picking pieces of turkey out of the cream sauce and eating them, leaving little squares of potato in the crust. She's on a diet again. "Kim has no idea of how to be tactful," she said. "How to lie, you mean. I want to tell the truth, like George Washington," I said. I looked at Daddy. I expected him to take my side, especially after what he'd said about people not trusting you if you didn't tell the truth. "That story about Washington and the cherry tree is a myth, I'm afraid, Kim," he said. "It was invented by a Parson Weems, and somehow it caught on as stories do. It was promoted further in the public mind when someone made a painting of the scene." "Parson Weems!" I put down my fork. "Parson Weems! And it was just a put-on? I'd heard that story since I was little. To think it was a lie, and that a parson had told it!" I shook my head in amazement. Everybody was deceitful. I stuck my fork in a hole in the tablecloth and twisted it absently. "Everybody tells lies," I was thinking, "even clergymen." "Don't do that, Kim," Mother said. "You're making that hole bigger. I'm the one who has to mend it. I should think by this time you'd be old enough to show a little consideration for others. Aren't you ever going to grow up?" "I hope not," I said in what I hoped was a cutting tone. "I hope I don't. If being grown up means being a phony, I'd rather be R-word." "I'm not sure you're not," said Sherry. I glared at Sherry. "Now, Sherry," Mother reproved. "I don't see why Allison was so upset," I muttered. "I didn't say anything so terrible." Sherry looked across the table as if she hadn't seen me before. What's Kimberly done to her hair? Why's she got that brown stripe down the middle? As if she'd forgotten. It's nice, like a chipmunk, Peter said. I hope you're not going to let her go out looking like that, Sherry said. She looks repulsive. I do not. I slid down in my chair, reaching out with my foot, trying to kick her under the table. I do not. Sherry gave a cool smile. See how it feels? Do you still wonder why Allison was upset? She at least looks normal. You look like something escaped from the zoo. Like a chipmunk, Peter agreed. Now, Sherry, Mother said again, taking my side for once. You tried to bleach your hair, remember? All girls experiment. I know I did. When I was at boarding school, we did all sorts of crazy things, my roommate and I. We went on fad diets and tried to make our hair red. And one time Margot and I let our nails grow long and then clipped a V out of the middle of each nail so it had two sharp points. I'm glad I didn't know you then, Daddy said. Imagine what you could do if you were mad at someone. Tear them to pieces. We almost scratched ourselves to pieces. Mother looked at her nails. She keeps them in nice ovals with pink polish. I wonder where Margot is now. She was my best friend at the time. It might be fun to try, I thought. Allison and I could let our nails grow and cut them in points like that with Daddy's nail clippers. We could have a club and call ourselves the Tigers. Only Allison wasn't going to speak to me again. Chapter 6. The pond at Squires Park froze, and I went skating. Allison was skating too, but when she saw me, she skated away. At school, she never looked in my direction. She sat with Patty Jo Burst on the bus and played with her after school. Patty Jo lives at Squires Park too, but she's nearly 2 years younger than we are. I had no one to play with. I was bored. But all the time I kept telling myself, I don't care. I'm not going to break my pledge. There are too many phonies in the world. Christmas vacation came, and the weather was awful. It rained for 2 days. Then some snowy slush fell and spoiled the ice. The big boys shoveled a rink and left the slush in big piles around it. The little kids ran around the rest of the slush, and that night their footprints froze, and the pond had bumps all over. So there was no more skating. Daddy said we needed a good thaw and then another freeze. Not being able to skate made things worse. I missed Allison. Luckily, I had all those Christmas presents to make, and that kept me busy. I had to help Peter make presents, too. He watched me working, and I gave him scraps of material. His method was to make something first and then decide what it was. He rolled up a small scrap of red felt, glued it together, and after looking at it a while, decided that it was a thimble holder. Then he hinged 2 pieces of cardboard at one edge with Scotch tape and said it was for Daddy, a paper to hold papers. So during all the bad weather, there I was, playing with a 6-year-old. But I didn't really mind. Peter is so cute and funny, and I hadn't told a lie for nearly 2 months. I had kept my record straight. And then, just a week before Christmas, my pledge was put to a real test. I was faced with a question I couldn't answer truthfully. It was a real dilemma. The weather had behaved as if taking orders from Daddy. There was a thaw. All the lumps and footsteps on the pond melted, and then the weather turned cold. But it was a nice kind of cold, with the nicest kind of snow. Big flakes came swirling past the windows like falling petals. We had hamburgers and frozen French fries for dinner because Mother and Daddy were going out. Sherry had a part in the school play, and naturally they wanted to see it. Mother left her dessert on the table and went back to the telephone. She'd been calling all afternoon and hadn't been able to get a babysitter. When she came back to the table for her coffee, Mother was about to give up. All the girls who usually babysat for people were either in the play or working backstage on props or prompting or were acting as ushers. You've got to see it, I said. Sherry is really great. Sherry had the second most important part. I had seen the play myself that afternoon. Grades 5 to 9 always get to see the dress rehearsals. I can take care of Peter, I said. Mother looked doubtful. I've been taking care of him all afternoon, I pointed out. What's the difference? I think Kim can manage, Daddy said. She's a sensible girl. Oh, I don't know, Mother said. I don't like to leave them alone at night. I exploded. You let Sherry babysit, for other people even, when she was 11. Sherry, Mother said, has always been very mature for her age. I made a noise. I wish those Planned Parenthood people would take some action, I said. They ought to get Congress to pass a law that couples could only have one child. Then your parents wouldn't be comparing you to somebody. But of course, I realized if they passed that law, I wouldn't have a little brother. Come to think of it, I wouldn't be here either. But it would be nice to be judged for myself for a change. Maybe I could get somebody to come and babysit with me. I was thinking of Allison, of course. She'd never get a chance to babysit going around with Patty Joe, because Patty Joe wouldn't be old enough to be a sitter for years. "Oh, for heaven's sake, Mother," Sherry said, "let Kim do it. She's not a baby, and it isn't as if we lived in the wilderness. There's a house every few feet. In fact, we're surrounded with neighbors." "That's so," Mother admitted. "The Fletchers are away, but the lights are on at the Desmonds. You could call Mabel Desmond, Kim, if necessary, I mean." "Phooey! Mabel Desmond is an old actress who used to be in the movies long ago, in the silent movies. Nobody ever calls her Mrs. Desmond. They always use her full name. Mother says she was famous in the old days, but I certainly wouldn't need her." "I know more about taking care of a 6-year-old than Mabel Desmond," I said. "Now, Kim," Mother said, as if I had criticized the woman, "Mabel Desmond is a very admirable person." Mabel Desmond has a look that Mother calls faded grandeur. She wears a hat and gloves to the supermarket, white gloves all mended in the fingers, and although she's old, she sails along like a ship, her earrings swinging like lanterns. "You've got to give her credit," Mother said. "They have so little, and she puts on such a brave front. Their house is in shambles, but to hear her talk you'd think it was a mansion." "Fine mansion," Daddy laughed, "with cats in all the chairs." It sounded to me as if putting on a brave front was just another kind of lying. Lying to yourself. I was getting to know quite a variety of different kind of lies. "Are we going or not?" Sherry wailed. She pulled her long hair free of her coat collar. "I've got to be there early." So Mother finally put on her hat. It's of shaggy fur, the same color as her hair. I'm always afraid someone will think she has an enormous head. "All right, Kim," she said. "Perhaps we'll call up during intermission to make sure you're all right." "Oh, Mother, we'll be fine." "And if you should go to the Desmonds, please be tactful. Mind your manners." "Honestly, Mother," that made me think of old ladies holding teacups. "Mind your manners." Or of little boys going to dancing school. "Manners," Mother said, putting on her gloves, "simply means thinking of others. If you thought of others, you wouldn't need manners. You'd have them." "Come on," Sherry said again. The show wasn't supposed to start until 8:30, but the cast had to be there at 7 to get made up and all. Mother and Daddy were going to drop her off and then do some last-minute shopping before the play started. Mother seemed to have given up on the idea of an old-fashioned Christmas with just homemade gifts. That was fine with me. I didn't exactly want homemade figure skates. Mother gave us the usual warnings and went to the door. Daddy was jingling the car keys impatiently. "Be good, Peter. Don't give Kim any trouble." As if he ever would. Then they were really gone. I was in charge of Peter and the house. I was responsible. I had a lot of plans. I was going to make a few Christmas cards, and I was going to surprise Mother by making the Christmas Eve cookies. We always leave some near the fireplace with a note saying, "Help yourself, Santa." That's for Peter's benefit, of course. He always looks at that plate the first thing, Christmas morning, and of course there's never anything but crumbs left. That was one of the good things about having a little brother. Someone in the family who still believed in Santa Claus made Christmas more fun for all of us. Peter brought his crayons and a pad into the kitchen. "Let's color," he said. "You start. I want to make a phone call." Chapter 7. Before dialing Allison's number, I did some thinking. I knew Allison missed me. At school she was always calling other kids Kim by mistake. I had even heard Patty Joe say, "Allison, will you please stop calling me Kim?" That showed Allison was thinking of me. But she had made a vow not to speak to me, and I knew from experience you can't break a vow without feeling crummy. So how could I keep her from hanging up the minute she knew who was calling? "I know," I thought. "I won't say this is Kim. I'll just say, 'Guess what? I'm babysitting.' Allison will be too surprised to hang up. She'll be thinking, 'I've never had a babysitting job, and I'm 2 months older than Kim.' So before she has time to remember her vow, I'll say, 'How about coming over and babysitting with me? Then we'll both be experienced. We'll be able to get outside jobs as sitters and earn lots of money.' That ought to turn her on. But if she doesn't agree right away, I'll tell her my idea about letting our nails grow long and cutting them into deadly points and calling ourselves the Tigers. All our enemies, kids like Roberta Lawson, would be afraid of us. We'd never have to scratch anybody. We'd just show them our hands. Allison will probably say, 'Kim, you get more ideas,' and then we'd be friends again." Mother had been saying for weeks that I ought to apologize. But you can't call somebody up weeks later and say, I'm sorry I said you were ugly. It would just make them mad all over again. I liked Daddy's idea better. He said that all it needed was one friendly gesture. I picked up the phone and put it down again. What if Mrs. Morse answered? Alice's mother had told somebody I was the rudest child she had ever known. Well, if Mrs. Morse answered, I disguised my voice. I'd say, Hello, Oscar, this is Olga. I can do funny accents. But that would be a lie, and I'd sworn never to lie again. Was I going to break my pledge just because of Mrs. Morse? I'd see, I thought, and reached for the phone. Before I could dial, it rang. Hello, this is Oscar, I said, confused. What? Is that you, Kim? Patty Jo asked. What's the matter? You sounded so funny. Do you want to come caroling? Who else is going? I asked, meaning, is Allison going? Me and Allison and Tommy Grimes so far. We're going to ask Glenn and Martin Walker. If they come, we'll need another girl. Well, I'm babysitting. It made me feel older just saying it. So I can't go. But why don't you stop by and say hello? The minute we'd hung up, I felt lonesome. I hated to think of Allison out there without me. When the kids came by, I'd asked Allison to stay. She'll be cold and the kitchen will be warm and smell inviting, I thought. I mixed up some cookie dough and began to feel better. Peter was sprawled under the table with his crayons. Isn't it too dark down there? I asked. I like it, said Peter. It's nice and shady. Shady. In the kitchen. He kills me. Babysitting was fun, I thought. Not that other kids would be as nice to take care of as Peter. He's so funny. He's not perfect, of course. He can be stubborn at times. When he gets an idea, you can't shake it. For instance, he won't wear matching socks. He likes to wear one color on one foot and another on the other. He gets furious if you try to make him wear two alike. So Mother lets him have it his way. It's not that important, she says. And then he insists his favorite color is black. Black. It's not even a color. I leaned down to see what he was doing. What are you making? A present for Santa Claus. A picture of himself. That's nice. We can leave it with the cookies. It was a pretty good picture for a little kid. But when he started filling in the color, I saw he was making the suit black. Santa's suit should be red, I told him. I like black, Peter insisted. Anyway, this is his good suit. His red is for every day. I didn't argue. Let him do it his way, I thought. The bell on the oven timer went ting at the same time the telephone rang. Get that, will you, Peter? And if it's for me, I'll be there in 2 secs. I didn't want the cookies to get too dark. The call was for Peter anyway. I heard him say, Hi, Kenny. I put the cookies, peanut butter, my favorite, on a cooling rack. They looked good and smelled delicious. If they hadn't been too hot, I would have eaten one right then. Peter was on the phone for quite a while. When he came back, he picked up the drawing he'd just made and crumpled it. Peter, what's the idea? That was nice. Not going to put it out, he said, his lips tight and stubborn. There isn't any Santa Claus. I felt as if somebody had punched me in the stomach. How did you... Who said so? Kenny. Kenny, whose information was always correct. Kenny, who knew about tachometers and altimeters and how fast birds fly. Is there? He asked. I didn't know what to say. We had always had fun talking about Santa Claus, pretending we heard his sleigh bells and his reindeer stamping. I pretended to be too busy to answer, washing the cookie sheet for the next batch of cookies. I wanted to say, of course there's a Santa Claus, but I'd be breaking my pledge, and making a liar out of Kenny, too. But if I told the truth, Peter would lose Santa Claus forever. There wouldn't be a second chance. Well, is there? Peter asked again. You wait and ask Daddy. Why, don't you know? Of course I do, silly. Then why won't you tell me? I wished I knew what Mother and Daddy would want me to say. Didn't Mommy just help you write a letter to Santa Claus? Yes. Well then, who are you going to believe, Mommy or some little kid? That was a mistake. Kenny wasn't some little kid. Peter felt about him the way I feel about Allison. I was in such a jam I broke my pledge without thinking. I once heard of a boy who didn't believe in Santa Claus and he didn't get anything for Christmas. Not anything? What's his name? He could have my old fire truck. Where does he live, that boy? I banged the cookie sheet on the sink. Peter, you're going to drive me up the wall with all these questions. He looked hurt. I'd never yelled at him before. Don't be mad, Kim. Just tell me if there's a Santa Claus. All right, there isn't. There isn't. There isn't. Now are you satisfied? He was, apparently. I knew it. Kenny was right. He went to his room. I leaned against the refrigerator. I'd done it. I'd told him. When Mother and Daddy came home, they'd bawl me out, saying I should have been more tactful. I wanted to call Peter and take it all back, but that wouldn't work. When something is said, there isn't any way to take it back. I'd found that out with Allison. I felt miserable. Chapter 8. I sank down on a chair. I had a real problem, but there was no use calling anyone. No one could help me with this kind of problem. Not even Allison, though I would have been glad to have her company. Well, no use brooding. The damage was done. Christmas would never be the same for Peter after this. I remembered how you felt when you still believed in Santa Claus. You went to bed with a shivery, excited feeling, hoping he would come while you were asleep. Then, early in the morning, before it was really light, you slipped out of bed and ran to the living room, and your heart almost stopped, because he had been there. There was the tree where nothing had been before, shimmering in the morning light, with mysterious packages on clouds of tissue paper underneath. The tree was more beautiful at that moment, shiny and silvery in the half light, than it ever was afterward. I haven't had that shivery feeling in years. It was a shame to have Peter lose it so soon, but what weighed like a stone on my chest was the fact that I had told him when maybe I needn't have. He came in with his old fire truck, smelled the cookies, and asked for one. I'm hungry. No, I said automatically. Those are for Set. I had forgotten. Here, you can have two. They were cool by now. No sense saving them. There would be no sense in most of the things we did at Christmas time. I made a feeble attempt to right the situation. You know, Peter, when it comes to things like Santa Claus, no one's really sure. Kenny is. Kenny says that if you stay awake on Christmas Eve, all you'll hear is your mother and father talking. He says nobody could get around the whole world that way, just stopping to give things to all the kids in just one night. Maybe Santa uses a jet, I said foolishly. Besides, Kenny says chimneys are real small. Nobody with a fat stomach could get down a little chimney. Peter went to the living room and looked up the fireplace flue. Wow, is that tiny? Okay, I thought. I give up. I had tried. A knock sounded at the kitchen door, and Patty Jo called, Kim, here we are. I opened the door. Can't you come with us, Kim? Patty Jo asked. If we can get you and one more, we'll have a double quartet. 4 boys, one of them quite small, were standing on the road, holding song sheets. Allison was waiting for Patty Jo, halfway between the boys and our house. Our big front light shone along the path, and I could see her clearly. Her cheeks were bright pink from the cold, and there were snowflakes stuck to her dark hair and eyelashes. Her face was framed with the white furry stuff that lined her hood. She looks pretty, I thought. I never knew Allison was so pretty. She caught me looking at her and turned away. I'm babysitting, Patty Jo, I said, speaking in a loud voice, so I'm afraid I can't come. I'm getting experience sitting with my brother so I can earn money for sitting for other people, and I'm having fun making cookies. I could only hope Allison would get the message. In case she didn't, I added, I wanted to call someone up and ask if they wanted to keep me company and get experience themselves. None of us can, Patty Jo said. We haven't enough people for caroling as it is. Hey, why don't you bring Peter? Then we'd have 8. Kenny's going. I hadn't got through to Allison at all. She was scraping snow into a mound with her boot. Kenny's older than Peter, I snapped. I wasn't really mad at them, but I must have sounded mad because Patty Jo said, okay, and they all went on. I had felt a little lonesome before. Now I suddenly felt like the only person on a desert island. I stood at the door wishing I could go with them, wishing I hadn't offered to babysit, wishing I hadn't told the truth about Allison's haircut. I even wished for a tiny second that I didn't have a little brother. I looked out. It looked beautiful out. The sky was black, with no stars. The snow that blanketed everything was untouched, except for footprints that led to our door and away again. I could hear an occasional voice from the pond, and the hollow scrape of skate blades. Some of the grown-ups who didn't have kids in the play must have been skating. I wished I could be with them. I love to skate when there's just an inch of fresh snow on the ice. Your skates go whispering through it, leaving black lines behind you like a signature. When the phone rang, I went inside, slamming the door. I didn't feel like bragging about babysitting to anybody. Now I didn't consider it such a great thing anymore. Everybody else was out having fun. I was stuck inside trying to answer questions. For a moment, talking to Patty Joe, I had forgotten my problem. Coming back to the kitchen and seeing the crumpled drawing of Santa Claus brought the unpleasant problem back to mind. I kicked the ball of crumpled paper and picked up the phone. It was Mother. "What is it?" she asked the minute I'd said hello. "Is something wrong?" "No, we're fine." It would be a relief to tell her Peter's discovery, to ask for advice, but she would probably bawl me out. "Is it intermission?" I asked, thinking only an hour, and they'll be home. "Heavens, no! We just got back from shopping. The play is going to start any minute. I just wanted to see how everything was." "Everything's fine," I lied. I'd already broken my record anyway, and it had been such a great record, going all that time without even the teeniest fib. "Are you sure? Where's Peter? What's he doing?" "He's right here, with his fire truck. He'd be asleep when they got home, so I could wait and tell them then. Are you feeling all right, Kim? Your voice sounds a little funny." I could hear the kids singing at the Desmonds. "Oh, little town of Bethlehem, how still we see thee lie." The kids are out caroling. They wanted me to come. "So that's it." I could hear the relief in Mother's voice. "Why didn't you say so? Listen, Kim, you can go out and sing with them if you'd like. It's not late." "And leave Peter alone?" "Of course not. Take him along. He'll enjoy it. He loved going out on Halloween. But don't go too far. He'll get tired. Just go as far as the Metzers and come back. All right?" "Terrific." "But bundle up warm. It's cold out." "We will. And don't lock yourself out." "We won't. Bye." I ran to Peter's room. He was almost upside down in his toy box looking for the fire truck's lost wheel. "Come on, Peter. We're going caroling." I pulled his snowsuit from the closet. "I don't want to." "What's caroling?" "Singing Christmas carols. It's fun. You go from door to door like on Halloween." His face brightened. "Like trick or treat?" "Yes, only we don't get any candy." "I don't want to go." "Kenny's going. He's already started." In 1 second flat, Peter had thrown down the fire truck and was pulling on the pants of his snowsuit. That's all it takes, I thought. Just those few words and he changes his mind. Words were certainly powerful when you thought about it. They could change a situation just like that. Yeah, I thought heavily, they certainly could. They could make your best friend hate you. I helped Peter with his jacket, mittens, and boots, and grabbed my own jacket, and we started out. Passing the kitchen door, I remembered the oven was still on and turned off the gas. Only one batch of cookies made. Daddy's suggestion, one friendly gesture, popped into my mind. I'd give the cookies to Allison. I dumped them into a plastic bag, and we dashed out.